Florida homeschool families, we see you, and we're here to support your journey. At Bridgeway Academy, we've empowered over 30,000 families with flexible, accredited K-12 programs that meet you where you are. Whether you're just getting started or refining what works, Bridgeway gives you the freedom to choose fully online, self-paced, or a blended program with expert guidance every step of the way. For a limited time, FPEA families can take advantage of an exclusive offer. Enroll for the 2025-26 school year by July 31st and lock in your tuition rate through 2028. That's up to 3.5 years of consistency and support that grows with your child. To learn more, go to info.homeschoolacademy.com/FPEA. Again, that's info.homeschoolacademy.com/FPEA. Bridgeway Academy, empowering Florida homeschool families with choice.
I can't teach my children from these books because what I'm doing is I'm planting seeds of doubt in their hearts. And I wanted to give them a firm foundation in creation science, but I didn't really have any resources to teach them creation science. I wanted to teach them in-depth science, and I wanted it to be engaging, the narrative to just really bring the subject to life. And so I decided I would write one.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says, you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me. Today I had a chance to chat with Jeannie Fulbright, author of the #1 best-selling, multi-award-winning Apologia Elementary Science series. Jeannie and I chat about leaning into the sparks of interest that we see in our children, being diligent and still patient, and pursuing our passions. And we also talk about what it is like to deal with personal challenges and homeschooling through those times. And no conversation would be complete with Jeannie without a discussion of Charlotte Mason and her philosophy of how we should educate our children. So sit back and enjoy this episode with me.
I spent pretty much my entire childhood outdoors, but I think that was pretty typical for a 1970s kid. I was, we ran around the neighborhood. I did not wear shoes. I was always catching snakes, and anything that I could catch, I was catching. And I would say maybe a little wild.
Maybe a little wild. I can associate. One of my favorite things to catch was roly-polies.
Yes.
That was always a favorite. Always a favorite. So you were out and about in nature. I'm going to assume, and I may be wrong in assuming this, but were you in public school at that point in time?
Yes, I was in public school. My mother was a public school principal, and then she moved on to become a public school administrator. And by the time that I was in high school, she was choosing curriculum for the Austin Independent School District, where I grew up in Austin.
In Texas, so you had a lot of good time to be outside. Lots of good outside
all
time.
Year long.
Yeah. So what kind of hobbies and interests did you have as a child?
So I began my writing career very, very young. I loved to write stories. It was either reading or I was writing. And I was obsessively read. It was kind of a problem. I would be on the phone with a friend and they'd be asking me a question. They'd say, "Are you reading?" I was constantly reading. But I started writing stories. I wrote my first book when I was 10.
Okay.
And just always I just knew I loved writing, and I knew I was going to write books when I got older. But what's interesting is I really didn't have a specific genre or direction I was going to go with my writing. I wrote all kinds of stories. I wrote all kinds of things. And I just was always writing. That was really who I was. I was a writer. Everybody knew it.
Everybody knew it. That's awesome. How did that play out for you in school, like through the years? Did you spend a lot of time in high school writing and middle school,
Yeah,
like all through those years?
I did. I was constantly writing. I was just really, really interested in creating world building, and creating novels. I wrote lots of different novels, but in high school, I was actually the director, the head of the student anthology. And so I was always trying to get other people to write stories too, so
Oh,
that I
yeah,
could
cool.
publish them in the student anthology. It turned out that probably 50% of the stories in the anthology were mine, but I was always recruiting writers in my high school.
That's a really neat story. And you said you wrote a lot of novels. Did anything from that point were you published like outside of school
I
materials? Did you
wasn't.
try?
What's interesting is that I realize now that as I got older, I realized God has given us different gifts and talents. He's
Mm,
given us all just passions and interests and things He's going to work out in us. And my parents, though they knew that I was obsessed with writing and that I was going to be a writer, they didn't really do anything to help me hone that.
mhm.
So I was just kind of doing it on my own, and I never completed a book at that time. And I feel like what I wanted to do with my children, and I did, and I encourage parents to do, is to look for the little sparks that children have, the little interests, the little passions. Charlotte Mason calls it the divine curiosity. And
Mhm.
she believes, and I believe, that God inspires us in our hearts to want to do what He has called us to do. And
Mhm.
He has given us, we're created in Christ Jesus for good works, which He prepared in advance for us to walk in. And so, therefore, even young children, you can begin to see in them the interests that God is putting on their heart and the directions that He's
Mhm.
going to lead them. And so that
So
was one
true.
thing I felt like homeschooling is the perfect opportunity for parents to do that, is to really give their children an opportunity to grow in their unique interests, gifts, and talents.
Yeah, and you're very, very right. I think that was one of the biggest blessings to me because I had 5 children and they were kind of mixed. They were in school for a little bit, then they were homeschooled, and then I had children who were homeschooled from the beginning. And it was just such a blessing to me to be able to watch the the difference, honestly, and what it looked like for somebody who was homeschooled from the beginning to go through and to embrace their passions and their interests and see, and even to the point for me, you know, um, I have a son who's interested in ministry, and back when he was 10 years old, he didn't want to stop studying the Bible to go do math. And there was just that thing in me saying, how can I say, put the Bible down and go do math? So,
Right.
we leaned into what he was interested in, and he still got math done along the way too. But, that's so important because I think it does. If you lean into those things, it makes a world of difference because that's a lot of years when you have those years in school to really hone those skills and help, at a younger age to learn. So,
Yeah.
so writing was a passion. Where in the world did science fall in? Because I loved writing. Science was not what I was interested in.
Yeah.
So,
So I would never in a million years think that the first book that I would write would be a science book. Now, I was a pharmacy major at the University of Texas, and so I was very knowledgeable about science, mostly college level advanced science, but
hmm
I had a love and a passion for science as a child, not really realizing it was science. It was just my love of the outdoors.
right.
Um, but what happened was I I I knew when I was a young mom that I was going to write a book. I didn't know what it was, and I asked the Lord, Lord, I just really want to write a book. And He said, I just felt like He told me in my spirit. He said, you are going to write a book, but you just need to be patient. I will give you the book you will write when it's time to write it.
Mm,
And so what happened was, when my children were young, they wanted to learn about space. And so I went to the library and I got all these books on space, and I sat down with my kids around me, and they were beautiful books. And it was, I mean, within a couple of pages, my kids were bored to tears. The way it was written was not interesting. It was not engaging. Plus, it was filled with a bunch of evolutionary timelines. And my children would say, and I would try to skip over it. And my daughter would say, "Why did you skip over that part?" And I said, "Well, because we don't believe that." She's like, "But why do they believe that?" And it was just this whole thing where I realized I can't teach my children from these books, because what I'm doing is I'm planting seeds of doubt in their hearts. And I wanted to give them a firm foundation in creation science, but I didn't really have any resources to teach them creation science. I wanted to teach them in-depth science, and I wanted it to be engaging, the narrative to just really bring the subject to life. And so I decided I would write one. And so I just sat down and I thought, okay, I'm going to plan this out. I planned out all the chapters, and I started writing the book. And it was like I just felt compelled to continue writing this book. My kids were no longer interested in space, but I was determined to get this space book out, which ended up being, I first published it under the title The Young Christian's Book of Astronomy. But then J. Weil of Apologia, when he was owned Apologia, he found somebody had purchased the books. There was a store in Indiana that was buying it. That was selling it to little stores, little homeschool stores. And the store in Indiana showed it to Jay, and he called me up and he said, "I'd like to publish your book." And I thought, that would be great. So
That's awesome.
that was history. But, it was funny because what I really had to do in order to get this done is I had to kind of pull away from all the activities that I was normally involved in. I was normally running our homeschool co-op or running our homeschool group, and, doing all the organization and all the things for the church and all the activities and all the parties and everything. And I had to pull back from that. I mean, we would still go to some things, but I had to discipline myself not to say yes to a lot of things because it's so easy to, "Can you do this? Can you do?" And I had to say no. And so that was the one thing that enabled me while I was homeschooling my children to be able to write books, is because I couldn't do the fun stuff I wanted to do with other moms and things like that. So
let me back up for just a second, because you mentioned that when you went into college, you were studying pharmacy, but
yes.
You loved writing all those years and you wanted to be a writer. What prompted you to do pharmacy instead of going to school for writing or creative writing or something of that nature, literature?
That is forever my biggest question mark as far as why I wasn't, I would say, ushered into a career that fit my personality. And I don't know. I just thought, okay, my next door neighbor was the dean of pharmacy. And so I knew all about the pharmacy school. And I thought, okay, I don't know what I'm going to go to college for. I'm just going to go do pharmacy. And that's the thing that kind of breaks my heart about kids in public school, is that they don't know themselves. They don't really, I knew myself, but I didn't know that there was such a thing as getting a creative writing degree. I didn't know that. And so
sometimes we don't know all of our options, really.
Right. Yeah. And so I just kind of went into college like most kids, unsure what I was going to do. And so I started in this field, and it was about 3 years into that major that I started interviewing pharmacists, and I learned about their lives and what their jobs were like, and I thought, oh my goodness, that does not sound like something I would enjoy doing. And so I ended up changing my major, but I changed my major to the fastest major that I could get married. I could graduate and get married, because my husband said, as soon as you get your degree, we're going to get married. I said, okay, I got to get my degree right away.
So that was how you were the kind of detracted from writing too during those years, was just pursuing something else that you thought was good. And what was your major in?
I ended up getting a psychology degree.
Okay, so, there you go. You were able to get that quick.
I was able to get it really fast.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So then moving forward, obviously you got married, and did you start having children pretty soon, or were you
Yes.
working out doing these
I
other
started
things?
having kids pretty soon. Probably my second anniversary, I had a baby. So,
Okay, awesome.
yeah.
And so did you know you wanted to homeschool from the beginning? How did you come into homeschooling?
So, when my daughter was 2 years old, then the people that lived next door to us, they were an older couple, and their grandchildren would come and visit. And one day they had their granddaughter came over, and she saw me out in the yard with my daughter, and so she came over to interact with me.
Mm,
And she was so mature, and she was talking to me about things that were actually interesting to me. And I thought, how can she be 10 years old? How do you know how can you talk to an adult so comfortably? And that was really the the catalyst for it
mhm.
all.
Oh, that's great. A good testimony to homeschool children and home
Yes.
education. It does. It's amazing how well you can equip your children. And so you started homeschooling from the very beginning then.
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
Perfect.
Well, actually, that's not true.
Okay.
Backtrack here. So I planned to homeschool from the very beginning.
Mhm.
That was always my desire. And then um, when my daughter was almost 5, I found out that I had a very rare form of thyroid cancer.
Mm.
And I wanted to homeschool, but I had to have surgery, and she was about school age, and I had just had surgery, and then I had gone through radiation treatment.
Mm.
And so during that time, I put her back in school, or I put her
Okay.
in school for the first time.
Yeah.
She went to a little private Christian school. That after that, I was really praying, and I really didn't like what was going on in the school. It was everything I didn't want my daughter to experience, which was hyper focused on what people thought of her and getting really insecure. And she had always been so confident, and I thought, I just do not want her in school.
Mm.
But I didn't know if I was going to live. At that point, it was there was no it was really incurable. And so
Wow.
it came back. I thought, okay, well, we're gonna get through this. We're gonna get through this. And then after the radiation and all of the stuff, I went back in, and it had spread.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, okay, I don't think I'm gonna live. This is not looking good. So I wasn't sure how long I had left, and I thought, well, you know what? However long I have left, I want to homeschool my daughter so that I can pour into her as much as I can before I die.
Mm.
And I remember I even started praying for my husband's next wife, just that she would be a good
Wow.
mother to my daughter. And the verse that the Lord really gave me and that I really clung to was in Philippians, where it says, "For me to live is Christ, but to die is gain."
Mm.
And so that was my whole focus then is, you know what? If I'm going to live, I'm living for Christ. I'm going to do it. But if I die, I get to go be with Jesus. So
Mhm.
that's good. I don't want to leave my 3 children behind, but if that's what God has for me, I accept his will. And I just prayed earnestly for God's perfect will to be done. That's all I wanted. God, I want your will to be done. Whatever your will is, whether it's for me to live or die, that's what I want. And
Wow.
so I really prayed that a lot. And then when the school year ended, I was ready. I was preparing. I was ready to homeschool her. And so I just started homeschooling her right away. As soon as school ended, I said, okay, we're going to homeschool. Right that summer, I started homeschooling her. And it was so fun. And it was a few months later, I had a lot of people praying for me and a lot of things going on. And where I was just praying, and the Lord just led me in a lot of different directions as far as my healing journey. And that's
Mhm.
a whole nother story. But it turned out one day I went back in to look at how much the tumor had grown, and it had completely disappeared.
Wow. How that's an
It was
amazing.
a miracle. It was an absolute miracle healing. And
And you
and
had
so
3
I
children then?
I had 3 children, yeah.
What
And
were
they
their
told me that
ages?
they were 5, 3, and 1.
What a scary thing to be facing with those small children
Yeah.
thinking about all of the things, processing all the things, but you prayed for God's will to be done, and look where we are, right? I mean, it's amazing, and to have experienced a miraculous healing and to be left to be able to homeschool your children, I'm sure then was an enormous blessing to you. And you had another child.
It was, and I did. They told me
Yeah.
not to have any more children because of all the radiation, but I'm we were determined we were going to have 4 kids. So we did, and she was perfectly fine, perfectly
Oh,
healthy.
that's awesome.
Radiation didn't affect her. But yeah, I think that experience made me more dedicated to homeschooling
Mm-hmm.
because I thought, I don't know how many days I have left with my children, but I don't want to put them under somebody else's care. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want their hearts to be molded by somebody that I don't really even know very well.
Yeah.
And so, and I wanted to pour into them. I wanted them to know the Lord. I wanted them to understand the things that were important. And so homeschooling was the only option at that point.
And you would have been homeschooling during a time when it was still fairly, not anything like what we know today. Especially where we live. I'm like, this is the Disneyland of homeschooling, here in Florida. But the options, I mean, you would have had some maybe small groups or co-ops that you were a part of during those
Yes.
years. Like you said, you stepped back from some of that leadership and being the one out there doing it so that
Yeah.
you could write, which has been a blessing then to all of us and so many hundreds of thousands of people. But
Thank you.
when you started writing and you were teaching at home, I'm curious for me, because I know you are a Charlotte Mason mom. How did you get introduced to Charlotte Mason, and where did that interact with your education and what you were doing at home with your children?
So what happened was a friend of mine called me up when I'd probably been homeschooling about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And she called me up. She was a homeschool mom too. And she said, there's this seminar I want to go to. And it's a 4-day seminar. I think it was 3 or 4 days. And she said, I don't want to go by myself. Will you go with me? It's all about homeschooling. It's like how to homeschool. And I thought, sure. I mean, when we all start out homeschooling, we have no idea what we're doing. Like, any help I could get on this front, that sounds great. And so I got babysitters and I went to this seminar with her, and it was in a church, and essentially it was Charlotte Mason by fire hose.
Oh, wow.
This woman just taught us exactly what how to teach your children using the Charlotte Mason model. But not only that, she would actually do it with us, make us do it. So she would read a section from a book, and then she'd call on us to give a narration. She would have us do notebooking pages. She would have us do artist study. She would do it the way that we were going to do it with our children. And so that when I left that seminar after 3 or 4 days, I knew exactly how to homeschool my children using the Charlotte Mason model. I didn't know all of her philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
which I learned later, which, oh goodness, it's just so life-changing and so, I would say, just mentality changing. It gives you such a better, more eternal perspective
Yeah.
in your homeschooling. But I started homeschooling using the Charlotte Mason model, and that was another impetus to get me to write my science books. Is I wanted them to fit that model of education where it was an interesting, engaging, living book, and all the activities were narration and notebooking and hands-on things that actually brought the subject to life. And so it's incredible how these little things that you do, these little choices you make, how they impact your life so much.
Yeah, they are life-changing. I mean, and her philosophy is beautiful. I mean, when you apply it to what you can do as a home educating mother and family, and I think of the ways I was introduced to some of these different things. Charlotte Mason was one of the ones that just touched my heart. And I think that, one of the first books that I used ever for science for my kids was yours, and it was the ocean, the zoology,
Zoology
yeah,
too, yeah.
for the ocean. And so I loved that, and I had their notebook journals, and I loved those, and it was just an inspiration for me. Interestingly enough, I hadn't been exposed to Charlotte Mason's philosophies at that point in time. So I thought it was so interesting how it correlated so well when I realized this is what I like to do, and this is who, she was and what she did. And you really have spoken for us a lot at convention about the Charlotte Mason method. And where do you feel like it is today with moms? Do you feel like it still resonates?
Oh, yes, I really do. And I think some of the times when people are trying to implement her methodology, they miss a kind of the main philosophy that is Charlotte Mason's entire belief system, and that is that God is the supreme educator of your children, and that we need to just cooperate with God and help our children discover what it is that God has for them to do and the path that he has for them to go on, rather than trying to implement all these perfect methodologies. We need to be more hands off. Charlotte Mason calls it masterly inactivity, and it just essentially means not hovering over your children, not being the fussy mom where you're constantly reminding and redirecting and constantly and over involved in all of your children's every activity and every friendship and everything that's going on in their lives. That hovering is what actually kind of takes away children's self-motivation. And so I think even more so today, we have a tendency to hover, and Charlotte Mason's philosophy on step back and allow your children to develop without your constant intervention.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, you worded it very well, because I see that a lot of moms want to do the Charlotte Mason method, but it's like there's a breakdown sometimes between understanding the philosophy and the heart behind what her method is, and working it out with your kids. So I love that, and I love that you were talking about not hovering, because it is, I think about, like you said, when we were little, I ran wild in the streets barefooted till dark.
Yeah.
There were no cell phones, there was nothing there, right? We just came home and we knew when to come home.
Yes.
But the exploration and the enjoyment of, you really know, it's like you said, who you are. And then you get to high school and college, and it was like everybody's telling you, well, you got to choose something different. And it's such a release of, freedom when you can figure out, oh, you can actually come back and do what you love to do, because that's what God designed for you to do. And
right.
So I know you have spent a lot of time with Apologia and writing books. How many young science?
7.
So, wow. Over how many years?
So I started writing them in the year 2000, and I would say I finished chemistry and physics probably in maybe 2016, or maybe 2012.
Okay.
But so I was trying to churn out like a book every other year, or book a year, but it was kind of hard. But then I created the notebooking journals and all of the other things that went along with them. And now I'm doing revisions on all the books. We're updating them to be much more vibrant and colorful, and a lot of more images, and I'm adding a lot more creation confirmation. There's a lot more information out there that's really fun to add in, and stories, and so it's really fun to do the revisions on them.
Yeah, I can imagine. But you have not just stopped with the Apologia in your writing. You have moved on to other types of writing, and I want you to tell us a little bit about how it evolved. I know you've done some preschool science books and things, so tell us a little bit about the other projects you have.
So I love writing fiction. I actually have my master's in creative writing with an emphasis on fiction. So it was great to write, those science books, which are not fiction,
Mm-hmm.
but I have this real heart to write fiction as well, and to glorify God while I write in my fiction. And so I had created a little preschool science fiction series, the Buzzwood Bunch. They're like these 4 children that go on these adventures and they learn scientific concepts. And then I've also created a time travel series that takes these 3 homeschooled kids. Their dad built a time machine, and there's a dog, Rumble. It's called Rumble Tumbles Through Time. And then they go back and they learn things about history and ancient history. And so the first one, they go back to the time of Noah, and they actually meet Noah when he's 11 years old, and
wow.
just they learn about the dinosaurs and how the dinosaurs, and there's all this evidence for dinosaurs living with man, and that's brought up in the book. So they're learning, but it's a real action-packed adventure. I just finished the second in the series, which is Rumble Tumbles Through Time, Escaping Egypt.
Oh, that sounds great.
And they arrive in Egypt right during the first plague. So
Oh,
they get to go through all the plagues. So that's been fun.
that's
And so
fantastic.
so that's going to be published in a couple months once I get my illustrations in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've also created tools for homeschoolers, because I'm just creating things that I wish I would have had. When my last child graduated from high school, I had so much more brain space. And so I thought, you know what? I want to create the things. I want to provide for homeschoolers the things that would have made my homeschool so much more beautiful, so much more just vibrant and easier to implement the truths and the information that I just know that homeschooling moms are longing for.
And so I know you have a planner, a homeschool
Yes, my
planner.
Charlotte Mason heirloom planner, and
It's
but
beautiful.
what's Thank you. And one of the things that I love about that is that I have at the end of every month, I have a place for you to put your moments and memories, and to put pictures, and to write down your favorite events, favorite memories, things like what made you laugh this month? What was your favorite book? Because these are the things that we forget. Think about all the years we homeschooled, all of the days and all the events and all the laughter and all the fun, all the adventures we went on. And we only really have a handful of memories.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted it to be sort of like the living book that the mothers write about their homeschool journey.
Yeah, I love that. And they are beautiful. They really
Thank
are.
you.
And so there's that. And then you're publishing, you have a press now where you're publishing other books that include language arts,
Yes, language arts.
curriculum.
Yeah, it's a Charlotte Mason based language arts curriculum, which it's all of language arts in one book, rather than deconstructing language arts like they've done in the public school system, which doesn't make sense. All the grammar you learn, the vocabulary you learn, your spelling, your writing, all of it has to do with what you're reading. We have poetry, and then scriptures coming out in the fall.
So
So
poetry is out first and then scripture.
yes,
That's
yes,
amazing. And
yeah.
they're beautiful. It's just, they're beautifully done. And I think that, you and I were talking before we got started here about just loving to focus on the things that are beautiful things and capturing those things. And I think so much of the Charlotte Mason philosophy is bent toward that, and
Yes,
encouraging your kids to do that, encouraging moms to do it is so important, because I think that so many moms need to lean into that themselves, and with your
yeah.
planner and just participating with their kids and learning from the resources you're providing that are so welcoming and just so beautiful to dive
Yes.
into. It's important. And
I think it's important for us to give our children an appetite for beautiful things,
mm,
because they're being bombarded so much with imagery and things that are not beautiful, that are
mm,
not bringing out the beauty. God designed us to really appreciate beauty, but we have to be exposed to it,
yeah,
and truth, beauty and truth.
yeah. So um, you also have your history. What is the name of it? Living
It's called Living
Verse?
Streams.
Living
Living Streams.
Streams. Living
Living
Streams.
Verses, the language
That's
arts. Living
the,
Streams is the history. Yeah, it's essentially I've taken every important person and interesting event, and I've created a dramatized story. They're just little short stories through that you go through, so the children are actually getting to experience going across the ocean with Columbus, and they get to experience the French and Indian War, and so it's just it's very action packed and exciting, and I think it's also a true history. It's well researched, and I talk about things that other history books don't talk about. There's just so many events that that they don't mention in most history curricula. So it's American History, Living Streams, New World Wonders is the first one, and then there'll be another book, probably two more for American history, because there's so much incredible stuff that happened in American history that we just don't even hear about. And I think there's too much stuff to pack into 2 years for American history. I think it needs to be deeper and more exciting.
Well, I think that one thing is for sure, as you share some of the things that have brought you to where you are and what you're doing today, I look back and when you're talking about embracing like the beautiful things you've experienced, the beauty of miraculous healing, you've experienced the joy of raising your children in the homeschooling, community and you being able to pour into them. And, I think that one of the greatest things we can do is pass that ability on to others and leave a legacy that will enable others to do what we have done that has been beautiful. Show them how to lean into that and to appreciate that. And I really just appreciate your sharing the story with us because, again, we hear you speak and we see what you're doing, but often don't get to hear some of those personal moments that really had an impact. And again, I think, it keeps kind of coming back in my mind what you were talking about at the very beginning is just for us to know and to learn to see our children and what their interests are, what sparks their curiosity, and lean into those things because, we hope we will guide our children in their education to a place where when they come to that moment of, pivotal moment of now I'm an adult and I need a job and what am I going to do, that we've guided them towards something that really is who they are and what God created them to be and to do. And so I thank you for encouraging families in this way and moms in this way. And I know because of the way that we get to work together that you do that and you speak and you share and you bring that opportunity to those who you interact with. And I appreciate your willingness to do that. So much of the time, I love this. You just said it. I just graduated my youngest. And it was like, after you graduate your children, then you have time to work on all this.
It's like your brain, there's all this new space in your brain opens up. You're like, whoa.
Like all of a sudden. So
the fog's gone.
Yeah, so thank you for not retiring when you graduated your last, because you really have been able to just bless so many families with your work and your encouragement through these years. But I always like to ask this question because I know for me, and especially if you're a writer and someone who reads as much as you probably do, there's things sometimes that will inspire us in words. I know sometimes it's a verse, sometimes it's a quote from a book, or even something our grandmother may have said to us as we were growing up that just kind of resonates and encourages you. What would you share with someone that has encouraged you to just kind of step out of what would have been like an easy path for you and do the things that were harder, or, follow what God's leading is in your life? What would you say?
Well, I would say, so there's a verse in Colossians 1. It's Colossians 1 verse. It's funny that I wish I had brought this up before. I love this verse. It's Colossians 1 verse 9.
Okay.
And it is, I think, such an important verse for all of us to apply, not just to ourselves, but for our children as well. It says, "For this reason, since the day we have heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives." And that just, what I love about that verse is it talks about how we are able to understand what God's will is through all spiritual wisdom and understanding. So he goes on to say, "So that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience." And so here we have this opportunity to be filled with the knowledge of God's will. That's what Paul is praying for them. So that means that we have that ability, not just God's will for us, but also for our children. And God can give us real, true spiritual insight into what his will is for each of our children, their unique will. And sometimes we have to put aside our desires and our expectations of our children and just allow God to fill us with the knowledge of what his will is for each child, for each moment, for each day, and for our own lives. What is his will for me? And he will fill us with the knowledge of his will. He wants us to have that, and he wants to guide us and lead us so that we can produce fruit in everything we do. And I think homeschooling is a huge fruitful labor. It is a labor of love, but you're producing fruit. And this is a career. Yeah. Homeschooling is a career. It's not just something that we just decided to do unique for our family. This is a career choice that we moms have made. And as that is God's will for us, he wants to guide and lead us every single day. I think of that verse, his word, he will be a voice behind you whispering, "This is the way, walk ye in it." And he can lead us and guide us each day, each decision, every curriculum, every time we need to just toss out the curriculum and go to the park, change curriculum, whatever it is, God will fill us with the knowledge of his will. He will be that voice behind us whispering, "This is the way, walk ye in it."
I love that. It's JeannieFulbright.com.
JeannieFulbright.com.
So people can connect with you there, and of course on social media outlets as well. And they can see you when you're at FPEA too.
Yes, absolutely.
But thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your story with us. And we look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you, Suzanne. It was such a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at fpea.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.